Alright everybody, it's our Clow here and welcome to part 2. I'm going to do just a bit of overlap from the previous video to get us back up to speed, and then we'll get into talking about Groening's The Big Book of Hell, as well as Dante's Divine Comedy, nuclear consciousness in the US, and a whole set of other information. Alright, so let's reiterate for Matt Groening here. You see with his coding, the ES values at the bottom, I have highlighted the phrase Judgment Days, because do remember we started part 1 in looking at Larry Gonek, author of the Cartoon History of the Universe, and on page 166 it is titled Judgment Days and is talking about Israel being under attack by the Canaanites and a woman named Deborah joining forces with Barak to call out the troops. And again, you can see her citing for him to arise, Barak, arise. And so check out the coding for this. We went into this very extensively in part 1, but A, B, A, the first letters from each of those 5-letter words, that 555 is 121, giving us reference to Revelation, blood sacrifice, Antichrist, and the Great Seal. Okay, and so do remember, you can see it right up here, Larry Gonek, his coding has Queen of Pentacles in it, which is on page 166 of the Book of Thoth, which is absolutely how I got into discussing that. And I want you to again remember everything with the marqueur, the V that we were talking about, as well as the 3-dimensional hexagram inside of her scepter there. So one other thing to reiterate for the sake of this video, since we're going to get into talking about the prophetic 515 in Dante's Divine Comedy, do notice we can seemingly spot one here as well, because we have this V on her head here, or again the Roman numeral for 5, her scepter over here being the 1, and then the second V on top of the goat right next to her there. So there's that 515 for you, and as I'm going to show you on the cover of Matt Groening's Big Book of Hell, you see again the 515, and so much more to be said on that. And let's also bear in mind that for Matt Groening, a reference to the hexagram name comes up. Again, the interesting nature with all of that I just outlined for you. Okay, so now looking again at his profession added onto his name there, the values coming up as Doomsday Prophet and Sacred Mysteries. Now how tightly that intertwines with what we were literally just reiterating for you. Okay, also notice the idea of psychological operations. So let's take a look at this coding here for the Big Book of Hell though. Okay, so you'll notice that its Jewish value is 352, and so remember in part 1 we were talking very extensively, or not extensively, but mentioning the 352nd day is December 17th this year. We're in a leap year, and so again, I will get into all of that in just a moment here. I want to be sure to not jumble any of this up too much here. But so again, here is this, the 666 Fifth Avenue. This is where Gonek's Cartoon History of the Universe was published. And again, I'll pull it up for you on the back side here. So you can see that for you there. Also very interesting to note, it is in addition to the Library of Congress. And so I also want you to see here President Barack Hussein Obama written out, as well as the number 137, which is the simple value for arise, Barack, arise. And you also see there that 352, which is what I'm trying to get your attention on. So now with all of that in place, let me jump back down here so we can really keep moving. And do remember that December 17th, because we're going to be talking about all of these nuclear ideas here in just a moment, but was absolutely the day that the discovery of nuclear fission is cited as. Okay, and we can even take this one step further. You see here the division of Bantam Doubleday Dell is who is at this 666 Fifth Avenue location here. And so if I look at 1938 as 1 and 9 as 10, so I have 1038. I get Bantam Double Day Del, alright? And so there's all of that for you. Reference to Third World War, Agenda 21, demonic martial law, alright? All of these really troubling concepts there. And do notice it's the same value as Zachary Taylor, the only president to be exhumed based on conspiratorial research. Okay, again, I've done a lot of work on that. But let's keep moving here though, okay? So with that sort of baseline in place, another thing to bear in mind for that number of 352 is it's the same simple value for Order of Merit of the Italian Republic. Now, this very important to me because it was the organization that Luciano was a part of, and do remember we've been getting all sorts of his things, even Nason Dorma here in Matt Groening's coding is important because that was the last song Luciano performed live, and he lip-sync it and deceived millions of people. Okay, so there's the order. On the right side you see reference to another sacrifice shall stain the tomb, and he whom sounds the final trumpet. So all of that tying in very interestingly here. But so now let's keep looking. You see here reference to messenger as well as funeral, the global elite, false flag, alien plan, reference to Oppenheimer, even further solidifying these nuclear ideas, as well as it is all a charade. Absolutely something to always keep in mind with this. Okay, now notice the ES values for this are very important because we have reference to the path of Teth. This is the lust card, the Babylon card. You have the all-seeing eye, the secret sign, as well as Masonic imagery, veiled allegory, and ticking time bomb. And so again, with the Masonic imagery, everything on this cover from this hidden 515, and you even see a nice 33 with these two birds stacked over here. It really is almost overwhelming at a point, okay? But so it's absolutely something to keep in mind here. Now notice when you open the book, everybody's gone. Alright, and again, this tying into this idea of something actually taking place and wiping out everything as we are familiar with it. But so now what I want you to see here, and I noted it was interesting that Gonik said that his book was To Lisa. Again, Lisa Simpson, one of the most notable uses of that first name, but it's very interesting that Groening's book is for Deborah. And again, the man or the woman joining forces with Barack and saying, rise, rise, right? And so let's jump over here, and I want to take a look at that phrase for Deborah, just like we looked at to Lisa, but you have reference to Book of Death as well as Dark Death Angel. Okay, the ES values for this are the same as Life in Hell, which is absolutely what this whole book is comprised of comics from. That's the series name for these weird rabbit alien things that Groening has created. But look as well, you have Education as well as World War II, and again this joins us back to this episode of The Simpsons where we learn why Springfield worships serpents. Okay, Grandpa regaling this World War II story in which he's talking about being a cross-dresser and seducing Hitler, all of these 9/11 things. Again, let's go back and watch the first part of this video and you'll get a lot more information on that. But so, take a look through all of this. Again, Manhattan is where that 666 Fifth Avenue building is located. Absolutely worth noting there. And so I also want to keep moving here. I mean, there's tons of stuff I could go into, but World War III typed in like we saw too. It's very interesting to me because it gives us the same values because remember in part 1 we were talking about the number 141, and so what I do want you to see is it's the same as Let the Man March on the Ground, because on the ground were the last words of Charles Dickens. It's the same as I Hate Lip Sync. Okay, remember we're just talking about Luciano lip-syncing his last song. You also see Illuminati Freemason, as well as references to False Prophet, the Dark Messiah, and the Will of Thelema. Okay, so all of this really critical to keep in mind here. But so let me keep moving. Oh, and the 141, to take it the one step further, remember AF 141 is when Aldous Huxley's 9 Years' War is said to take place, all right? And so let's keep going here though, and look at the name Deborah. Alright, so I want you to see that it's a 7-letter name starting with the 4th letter of the alphabet. So 7 and 4 obviously gives us 11, but I think that 7 and 4 is important to keep in mind on a allegorical sense, because remember that the United States was founded on a 7-4, alright, that 11 when we add them together giving us the path of Teth, again the lust card which we were just talking about. And look at this, because this is going to come up later when I'm talking about the Mickey Mouse song, but for the United States of America, the #1 point of interest that comes up for it is Walt Disney World. And so really speaking to the just cognitive dissonance that really does characterize this nation, it's really kind of unforgivable in a lot of ways. But let me keep moving here. And again, a side note for America being founded in 1776, that's now 240 years ago. And since we're talking so much about Beyonce's World Formation tour and all of the singles from it, starting from February 6th when that Formation single was released, again having 666 values, to October 2nd when her tour ends, is a span of 240 days. So how interesting, it's referred to as the World Formation Tour. Alright, so let's keep going here for Deborah, and look at this, you get reference to HAARP, not going to get into it, but you also have that SNL reference. Again, thinking about Luciano is the only classical opera singer to perform on that show, and I really wish I had the time to go into all of the information on him. But I also want you to remember that if we reduce SNL, it gives us the numbers 153, which gives us the same value as In the Right Eye, as well as Sacred Lessons, the Illuminati, on and on and on. Okay, so keep moving with this though. Alright, so you have this reference here to go home, and so since we got Deborah from page 166 in Cartoon History of the Universe, if we want to reduce this down, we do 1 times 66 and looking at that. And so in the 66th page in Groening's Book of Hell, you're trying to help the damn kid find his way home, alright? And so this is very troubling to me. I want to zoom in on one portion here because this will come up later. But notice you have RIP, wet, as well as AA, okay? And so that's an 11 for you. If we were to look at it, it's a weird one, it's 552. And do remember, we're just looking at that, okay? That is absolutely the English value for Deborah, as well as life in hell, education, okay? All of these things. Hot sauce, there's another one of those Beyonce references for you there, alright? And so very, very interesting to me. And so in going home, the next thing we see reference to here is Dante, alright? And so that's when we're going to talk about our 515. But before we do that, let's take it one step and look at the ES values here. And do notice that the 318, the English value, is the same as, the same simple value as the man who shot Liberty Valance, alright? And so again, absolutely critical piece in this, and just tying it back to Matt Groening even, remember his ES value is the same as Tom Donovan, who is the man who actually shot Liberty Valance, the killer who was not seen, okay? So do you see over here though, reference to President-elect Barack Hussein Obama, as well as this interesting idea that the Large Hadron Collider is connected underground to the Vatican, alright? But I need to keep moving here to get all of this in. So notice we're still on Deborah, her ES values here. We get the reference to grave, Teth, again the path of lust, ending, hacking, and Del Mar's a nice Del Rey reference for you there. But so again, keep in mind what we're talking about in the graveyard here is very interesting to me, this peace sign that you have and the inverted cross, alright? So this is actually an inverted cross, the peace sign, the cross of Nero. We've talked about him throughout part 1, and he will come up throughout today as well. So with that, let's get into this bit talking about Dante's Divine Comedy, alright? I want you to see, this is from chapter 33 and it is verse 43, alright? And so when we, or excuse me, 40, Yeah, 43. Let me go back here so I don't get too jumbled with what I'm meaning. Yeah, so I add that right, and so when you add those together, 33 and 43, you get 76. So this is interesting. 7 and 6 gives us 13. Again, the death card, the transition card, all right? And so it's in this verse that we hear when a 500 and a 10 and 5 sent down by God will slay the shameless whore and the giant who with her in sin doth thrive. All right, talking about the bringing of the apocalypse, the ending of the old age, with the appearance of this number. And so I do want to leave you the link to this blog back here, because he does a really outstanding job of breaking down the allegory that is the Divine Comedy and talking about it actually being a metaphor for being initiated into secret societies. All right, so it's really interesting. But what I want to do now is jump back here, and so when we look at this 500 and a 10 and 5 as it's spelled out in the actual text of it here, you have the destruction of the world, as well as 9/11 was a false flag, and you get this reference here to September 21. And so I do want to just highlight that day for you here as it is coming up, and it's very interesting to me. If we can get this to cooperate, all right, because we have the 101 days remaining in the year from that point. And again, the immense significance tied in with that. Do even notice the Jewish value here of 2017, the year coming up here, in which we'll see a lot of this stuff going into motion with whoever would be the new president taking place, or whether it be the installed third term of Barack. All right, and so look at all of this. I really want to keep moving here, but there's very important phrases in there, including the public needs instruction, not entertainment. All right, now look down below. The ES values here give you the 33rd degree. All right, again, reference to either Brotherhood of Saturn or the Freemasons, but that harmonic 33, okay, but you also have this reference of America / Babylon destroyed, and then you get government conspired and 3, 4, 4, 4. So if we do the math on that, 3 times 444, we get 1332, and I think that's just such an interesting number because it's the same number that you get when you add 666 to itself twice. All right, and so in looking at that, you see all of these things that we get reference to, including true holy angel of death, divine gene, archangel of death, another reference to the September 11 attack, and the phrase impossible coincidences, which this is absolutely a part of. You also see key to the apocalypse and President Obama killed at night. So again, Ransom Rance Stoddard, the reference there is very critical because that is the man who takes credit for shooting Liberty Valance. You also see Jesus fucking Christ popping up in that coding, okay, so very critical. Let's note that Dante's Divine Comedy, each word in that is 6 letters. That's a nice 666 glaring for you. And if we look at 510 and 5 another way, I do want you to see that we get the reference to war war is inevitable, as well as best kept secrets of the government, and they hide their filth in pretty colors. Okay, so that's absolutely what is done. That's what the entertainment industry specializes in. You get the phrase as well that Satan uses everything, and wrath of Holy Spirit. So again, just thinking back to the actual text, that these are the things that this set of numbers, whatever it is further representing, is actually getting at. All right, so now notice here we have the ES values that are same as Santa's Little Helpers, is the Simpsons dog. Something I'll point out here is that each word in the Santa's Little Helper name there is 6 letters. Again, you have the 666 and this 216 reference, the number of atmospheric tests, I believe, nuclear tests conducted by the United States. But let's look at Santa's Little Helper just one shot further here really quick before we get into him at the end, because SLH gives us 138, just like this we are 138, right, from the Bullet EP, excuse me, from the Misfits here with Kennedy being assassinated. And again, this 137 here, it's the simple value for arise, Barack, arise. So very, very wild to me, okay, to say the least. And so let's get back to this here. I'll talk more about that later. But you see, to say the truth or die, as well as disappear, then reappear, and a reference to the Aeon of Adjustment. Remember the 8th tarot card saying that there's no such thing as justice. There's only adjustment to what happens in those who then survive. So now let's take this one step further, still looking at this passage here. And I want you to see, and this is written throughout in many places, but 510 and 5, written in Roman numerals, are D, X, and V, and so they talk about rearranging the letters. But what I want to do is show you DXV because it has the same Jewish value as 1-800 hotline Badu. Again, go watch my video on her and that release because it ties in very, very heavily with things. But notice as well, hotline Badu has that 666, 111 coding, as well as all of the other big singles that I talked to you about. Okay, so now moving forward, you see reference to Jesuit, as well as 33rd degree, Great Deceiver, Freemasons of the Illuminati, and the phrase kill, steal, destroy. There's also Brotherhood of Saturn, the last days of America, stirring up riots, and Barack is Shiva. Okay, so this is just really stunning to take into consideration. Notice the ES values here, reference to America, snake, owl, Donald as in Trump. And so this is interesting because if we do look at the rearranging there, and to take DXV as ducks, which is coming across as a leader, that's very terrifying with his name coming up there, because you also have reference to biblical, offer, and resh. Remember, that is the path of the sun card. And again, what Illuminati, if we break down that 10-letter word starting with the 9th letter, 10 and 9 for 19, again, that sun card is to be very harrowing in what we're looking at. All right, so in moving forward here, do notice that life in hell has the same values as for Deborah, education, hot sauce, all the things from the beginning of this video here. And so now let's move forward with this whole concept of Matt Groening and Doomsday Prophet, because The Simpsons is what he is arguably most noted for. Okay, so now let's take a look at this here, alright, because the Jewish value for this is the same as Skull and Bones, as well as leap year, which is what we're in the middle of right now. And I want to also point out, since the number 7 has been so critical to us, everything from this is Beyonce's 7th major world tour to the 7 points on the Seal of Babylon, the 7 points on the Mark of the Beast. She added 7 dates to her tour, whatever you want to flavor it as. This is the 7th leap year since the full-length premiere of The Simpsons, so something very interesting to me has to be brewing around that. You also see Obama, Master of Deceit, Satanic Magus, Undeniable Proof. I know this will be denied left and right, as well as a reference to the Final Crusade. Okay, and notice how I have many more notes for you here that I'm not saying aloud for time's sake. Okay, so notice the ES values here, same as None Shall Sleep. That's the translation of Nason Dorma. Again, that last song from Pavarotti, Lip Sync. Alright, you have United States, Ultraviolence, Jesus is Satan, as well as Grand Unveiling, and the number 64. Now, remember, that's the same symbol value for both Thelema and Clow. Alright, so very important. Something that I always try to hone you in on are all of the very inexplicable ways that I seem to be very heavily intertwined in this. So now, let's take a look at this here. Before we get into the first full-length episode, I want to talk to you a little bit about their first appearance on the Tracy Ullman Show. So the episode was titled Good Night, and you can see the debut date there, and a ton of things to look into with that. But notice here that the Jewish value is 275. Which is an inversion of The Simpsons, 572. Now this is important because that date is October 1st, all right, the day before her world formation tour concludes. And so there are 91 days remaining on that day. And as I talked about a while ago, on the 2nd, there will be 90 days remaining. And in the Book of Lies, chapter 90 is called Starlight and pertains to the end, while chapter 91 is simply the word Amen, all right? And so think about earlier in the beginning of all of this when we were talking about by the hand of Nema, and that when we invert that word, it is absolutely the word Amen. So now look further here, because you have a reference to seal forehead, as well as darkened blood and men in chains, okay? And again, we have this reference to Korea and America. Remember, on the date that I had flagged, September 9th, just a few days ago, North Korea tested their most powerful nuclear bomb to date, and so something absolutely appears to be brewing with that. But now, let's keep moving here. Notice the ES values, same as Batiste X. And so this ties us all the way back to what we were talking about with the Marcour. Remember, this is the mascot for the Royal Army Regiment 22 here. You can absolutely look into him further, but you also have, again, that Marcour on the Royal Air Force excuse me, badge there. And so all of that just stunning to me. But let's keep going, because you do see, again, here's our references to Nero Caesar, as well as Rapture, Raise the Dead, Physics, the Event, as well as Promised and Pale Horse. All right, but now let's keep going here and take a look at Lisa Simpson. You have the Occult, the Double One, the Hidden Master, as well as I Am Not Perfect and the Children of Gods. Down below, her ES values. Look at all of these same ads. You have Dying by the Hand, as well as Sic Sit Vobis, which are the final words in the Book of Thoth. You have my name in there. Mike Will made it, as well as Lord Roberts. Remember, the first president of the Pilgrim Society. Okay, now you have the Blood of a Goat, the Apocalypse, as well as Global Control, Anuit Coptus, Destructive. Okay, do you see all of this coming together? There's the Universe, Financial Crisis. All right, so now let's keep going here, though, getting into the season 1, episode 1, okay, that nice 11 there, that starts any television show, but that Path of Teth. So when we look at the full value here for the title of the episode, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, we see past, present, future, as well as Mystery of God, the Paradox of Existence, the United States Congress, and the Nuclear Consciousness. All right, so now remember back to me stating that in between the release of Gonick's Cartoon History of the Universe and Groening's Big Book of Hell, is 52 days in between, though. So I want to pull up 52 for you really quick and remind you it is the same coding as devil and NWO, as well as the word hello, which I bring to light here because in this episode, Simpsons Roasting, the first episode, we're introduced to Mr. Burns and Homer working at the nuclear power plant, all right? And so Mr. Burns' first word is hello, just like the first word from Apple's talking computer back in the 80s was hello. But so the nuclear consciousness that is embedded into the minds of people from watching The Simpsons is undeniable, because when you ask somebody, where does Homer work? At the nuclear plant. It is embedded, and it is very interesting how tightly interwoven it all becomes. Now notice the ES values here are the same as Beyonce, the Formation World Tour, which is the official name of her tour. And look at this, an abomination that causes desolation. For that is determined shall be done. Now, all of that is just beyond, but you see here the number of extraterrestrials as well as the Yellowstone supervolcano. Now, this is all interesting to me because, as we'll talk about here, like I was stating earlier, the interesting nature of Walt Disney World being the #1 point of interest, but #2 is Yellowstone, okay? And so we're going to talk about that and why it's important that it comes up. But before we get there, note that this was the only episode to be written by a woman named Mimi Pond. Both of those names are 4 letters, so you got a 44 there. M and P can reduce as 4 and 7, right? Just like the founding of America. And so you have that 11, that path of Teth. If we add that 44 and 11, there's our 55 again. And so remember, everything that we were talking about with 55 having to do with this New Age, Satan, Judas, wicked, right? And above there you see with these other things, the ideas of Thelema, an image of God. But so notice as well, another way to break it down, her M is 13, P is 16 for 29, number of bones in the human skull, and we'll talk more about 29 in just a second here. But so check it out, first episode, only episode written by her, Jewish value is the same as Satan, as well as Santa. And do remember that episode 1 is all about Christmas. You also have a reference to the black hole and Maitland, Florida, which has a slogan of community for life. So troubling to me. You also see America falling. Now check this out, because the ES values, here's our reference to Saturn, end of days, the word, propaganda, crucifix. Again, this 7th, you see Sod's Law, which is the idea that things will always go wrong and have the worst possible outcome. And then you see this reference here to going home. Now, this is crazy because you see here that Mimi Pond has the same ES values as RIP Wet AA. Well, do remember when we were looking at page 66 in the big book of hell, in which we're finding the way home in the graveyard, RIP Wet AA is all of the letters that we see. So that, right, that's enough, right? It's all right there for you. Alright, so now notice this as well. 2016 marks the 27th year since The Simpsons' first full-length debut, the episode we're just talking about, in the 29th year since their Tracy Ullman debut. Okay, so there's that 29 again. If we add 2 and 7, we get 9. If we add 2 and 9, we get 11. 911 reducing down to 99. And again, we were looking at that value of 99 right up here for Good Night, the first episode. Rapture, Narrow Caesar, 13. Remember, the 13th tarot card is death, transition. You also see the event and pale horse. So let's look at another way of checking this out here, because Simpsons roasting is how the episode is often referred to. I want you to see it's the same as Let 'Em March Boys and Farmers for Statehood. So now, Farmers for Statehood, absolutely critical. This is prefacing Tom Donovan telling Rance that he was the one who actually shot Liberty Valance. And so when we see that coming up here, as well as Let 'Em March Boys, again, go watch my Pez Theory stuff. It's very, very critical. But notice, damage Obama's right eye, kissed by a rose, as well as I'm sorry, Barack, and crusher of crocodiles. Again, the alchemical importance there, staggering. But notice here, the ES values, same as mass meeting elections. And I was talking about this in part 1, but we'll reiterate it here because it's very important for you to see that is what is behind Liberty Valance when he is shot by Tom Donovan without being seen. It's also the same as inspired by Matt and Kim, which prefaces the window seat music video in which Badu is shot by an unseen shooter in Dealey Plaza. Okay, so really the connotations there go very, very deep. And let's get back here though, alright, because we've still got much ground to cover. And what I want to bring into play here is the idea you see as well, Illuminati bloodlines, truth behind the scenes, reveal the hidden truth, as well as sealed with 7 seals and 17 times 6, which equals 102. And as I've shown you in the past, we can look at that as October 2nd, alright? You also have a reference here to the Mickey Mouse song. Now, I really wish I had the screenshots for you here, but do remember from Kubrick's movie Full Metal Jacket, in which there are 7 bullets on the helmet on the cover, as well as the peace sign that we've talked so much about, that the movie actually ends with the troops marching through a very apocalyptic war landscape while they are chanting the Mickey Mouse song. Okay, and so again, remembering that this is the #1 point of interest, listed for the U.S. Very, very troubling to me, alright? And so, since we're getting ready to talk about the Simpsons dog more, I will note that Mickey Mouse, his well-beloved dog named Pluto, is also the Roman god of death, alright? And so, what the fuck? And let's keep going here, though. As I stated earlier, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire is the first episode. It's the episode in which they get their dog, and the only one written by Mimi Pond. And again, Satan, Saturn, the word, all of the things we were just discussing connected to her there. But I want you to see here that Santa's Little Helper obviously has a easy anagram of Satan's Little Helper. Okay, so now let's take a look here. And again, you can see all of these reductions that I was talking about earlier, with each word in that name being 6 letters, the hidden 138, the inverted 93 if we add 19, 12, and 8, SL and H. But so keep going though here, as well as begin apocalypse event and the aeon of adjustment. So let me note one more time for you here that the discovery of nuclear fission using uranium was December 17th, 1938. Okay, and so I want to reiterate 1938 because it is the same value as love is the law, love under will. Okay, and so the key thelemic phrase, so very, very critical. And so since this all seems to be falling into place here, let's note here that Santa's Little Helper and this 510 and 5, their simple value is 216. So again here, now looking into the history of the US's nuclear testing, you see that there was 1,054 tests and 1,149 bombs. Of these, 216 were atmospheric, underwater, and space tests, alright? So now, this is partially why this is all bothering me so much, because it has that same simple value. But do remember that I've been talking about that span between October 2nd this year and December 17th as 77 days, right, or 11 weeks, but it's 2 months and 16 days, alright? So there's another glaring 216 for you there, alright? So it's interesting to note that the last U.S. nuclear test was 1,012 days, or 144 weeks and 4 days after the Simpsons roasting episode aired. Okay, so after that, there was 104, and look at these breakdowns to this 444. And since we were looking at, I want to show you that 77, because this is just too much to not bring back up to your attention here, but you do see this reference to 121 written out for this right here. And where did we see that earlier? The 444. Okay, so alright, so I don't have, it is right above that, but I don't feel like reiterating all the information to include that at this point. So let me just backtrack a little bit on that. But again, talked so much about this in the past, and we take this one step further and note that the last nuclear test was 5 years, 5 months, and 5 days after the Tracy Ullman debut on The Simpsons. And so again, that 555, just like the number and all of the things we were talking about with that, again and again, just reiterating for you here. But let's get back down, because we're almost to the end of this. Alright, and so we have this 555, 1,149 bombs. We can view this date as 11/4/9, again the reduction of 2016, and that would be the 309th day of this year, with 57 days remaining. And of course that's interesting to me because 57 is the same as rose, abrahadabra, again the word of the aeon, as well as ice cream, magician, and you see as well vaccine. Okay, so now take a look down here. We can break down this number as 11 times 4 and then 44 times 9. So this gives us 396, which is the same as the phrase, there is the dove and there is the serpent. Now this is a direct reference to the Tower Tarot card, and this is Crowley differentiating between the two forms of love. Alright, so again, immensely important, but you see reference to another government false flag operation, the 33rd degree of Freemasonry in worship or reverence of Satan as a deity. Now, if we look at 1149 as a whole, you get President-elect Barack Hussein Obama, as well as FEMA camp activation, the word meltdown, Antichrist collapse of the USA, absolute destruction, and the phrase vaccinations can kill. Do remember in Pez theory I've been talking about the idea that the vaccines are actually the mark of the beast while everybody's so worried about the RFID chip. You also see find the secret. Now, what I want to show you here is that I think one of the secrets this could be alluding to is the fact that we always see President-elect coming up with Obama in all of this, alright? And so since it comes up in the 1149 coding where it's saying find the secret, I want you to see that if we look at President-elect on its own, it's very interesting because there are 14 letters, and do remember the 14th tarot card is the art card, which we were talking about in part 1 with the phrase vitriol on it. But when we add P and E, 16 and 5, well, not even when we add them, when we just combine them next to each other, we get the value of 165. Now, I want to show you this because it's the same as Erica Abbey Wright, as well as United Nations, Resurrection, 22. You also see that reference again to Yellowstone. I want you to see here that it comes up with all of these things. Take My Life, Please. Again, this is the first episode that the new intro for The Simpsons aired, in which Ralph's eye, his right eye, is impaled with the ice cream cone, alright? And you also get that very important 729 that I've broken down many ways, divide and conquer, last trumpet. I mean, it's really staggering, but look at that as well. It's the same as Ransom Stoddard, the phrase I came to slay bitch, which is from Beyonce's Formation single, and on and on and on. Okay, so really troubling to me for that 165 there. Okay, and so one more thing to note for you, since we're talking about the art card, and it's something I feel that I have forgotten to mention, but if we're looking at December 17th, again the 352nd day, that days remaining there is 14. Again, that very critical card. But so check this out now. You have reference to Hussein Obama, as well as 114, which could be important for so many reasons, but 11 times 4 is 44. It's the number president that Barack is. This is also the 114th year since the Pilgrim Society founding. Beyonce's Lemonade came out on the 114th day. Kennedy was shot on 411 Elm Street. It can go on and on and on. But you see as well reference to CERN catastrophe, serpent/snake, and the cosmic battle. Now see here, the ES values for it are the same as Camptown Ladies and the Newsroom, which I want to highlight because Camptown Ladies is the song that Wiggum sings with the exhumed head of Jebediah Springfield, much to everybody's entertainment. Again, the Reverend, the Republican, the Mayor, Homer, and all of his connotations. And again, Chief Wiggum having that 666 coding himself. But so notice here as well, you have reference to the Great Babylon, the Great Deceiver, head mind control, delights in evil,